So gonna do a little bit of work on the Ranger. I'm going to put the decapped injectors in, and I'm also gonna put my old torque converter back in it. So right now it has a Circle D triple disc for the 4L80. I'm thinking about using the triple disc in the Escalade. So what I wanna do is I wanna test my old converter. Backstory, if you're not familiar, I ended up having some issues with what I thought was converter, but it was actually, I think, transmission, because the transmission ended up going bad and had some other issues with it. So I'm gonna put that old converter back in it, test it, and try to verify if it was transmission or converter. Downside is converter might already be bad because it was slipping in lockup, but we're gonna throw it in there and we're gonna try it. If it doesn't work, I'll leave it in there for a while just to move it around and just won't drive it with it locked.
5 hours later.
All right, so I got the torque converter in there now. The Circle D is out. I got the Roadrunner in, and that was a mess. It took me like 5 hours. I had it so messed up inside there because I tried to be slick and just unbolt it and slide it back, and that ended up being a lot more complicated than it needed to be because I had the thing like twisted and it got wedged in there, and then I couldn't get it out, and then I couldn't get it back in. It was just a headache, but I finally got it done and put the injectors in, so I got decaps in there. I'm gonna go drive it. It's 10 o'clock at night, but I'm gonna go drive it right now and test it. Alright, so pulled over to make a video. I drove probably about 15 miles already and kind of played with the lockup. It locks up good. It locks up based on temperature. It actually unlocked because the transmission temperature cooled down and it unlocked on the highway, and I'm revving at like 3,000 when it's unlocked because this converter is pretty loose. And then when it locked, it locks hard and it comes down to like 2,200, 2,100 on highway speed. So it seems like it's working really well, and I even like put my foot on the brake, let it unlock, take my foot off, let it relock, and it seems like it's working pretty decent. So I'm happy about that. Alrighty guys, so I took the Ranger for a spin and I drove it probably 30 minutes, like pretty much all highway, and locked up. My issue before, when I was using this converter, it would slip on the highway. So it would be in lockup, but if I would feather the throttle at all, it would start slipping. So like I said, if some of you guys probably remember that when I was having issues with this, I thought it was the converter. I switched to the triple disc and then it locked up really hard, but probably because it's 3 discs. So later in the season, I ended up having issues with that transmission, with it slipping and doing all kinds of weird stuff. So I always had the thought in the back of my head that it was maybe not the converter that was slipping, and it was the transmission that was causing it not to hold lockup. I ended up slipping that transmission and going with a completely different transmission because that transmission I had broken once, and then I swapped the guts out to a different case, and then I did a 4-wheel drive conversion on it, and I did a bunch of different stuff. I had that transmission apart probably like 3 or 4 times. And I think there might have been some valve body cross leaks or something going on with it. Instead of rebuilding it, I bought a completely different transmission. That's what's in here now. It was a working transmission. I put another HD2 kit in it. I drilled the holes to 1/8 inch, and this transmission's been working pretty good. I did break the snap ring on it once at the track, but as soon as I put this transmission in there, it seemed like it was working a lot better. So I always kind of had it in the back of my head that maybe the transmission was just not applying enough pressure when it was in lockup to hold it. And it seems like that might have been the case. So the other transmission, it would do it when it was like above 140, 160 degrees. Kind of another reason why I felt like maybe it was like a cross leak or some fluid pressure issue. Like as the fluid would get warm or hot, it would start to act up and have issues. So took the chance on it, put it all back in there, and it seems like it's working fine. So what I would like to do is actually get the fluid hot, like 140, 160 degrees, and then do the same test. But I did add another cooler, or I did add a bigger cooler. I added the TrueCool 40K. So I added this transmission cooler here, and this thing does really well. This was my old cooler. It's still on there. It's just not hooked up, but that didn't really do much compared to this one. I also did flip the inlet and the outlet to be on the top instead of on the bottom. I know there's some kind of conversation about whether that thing traps air or not, so I just did it that way anyways. It does seem like it makes more sense that it would come in and it would have to fill the whole cooler before it comes back out. But GM from the factory has them on the bottom, so whatever. I didn't even put the front drive shaft or anything back in when I went to go drive it, guys, just in case it had to all come back out. I didn't want to put everything back together. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it back in there like this. The only thing I don't really like about the converter is that I think it's like a 9-inch. I'll show a picture, the size comparison. Diameter, it's a little bit smaller than the Circle D, so it does rev a little bit higher, which may not be a bad thing. It's a little bit annoying for street driving, I think, compared to the Circle D. We'll see. Like I said, this truck I just kind of mess around and play around with, so doesn't really need to have all the great parts in it. At least that's what we say for now. So yeah, I'm gonna keep monitoring that, obviously, and I'll let you guys know if I have any other issues, but what I'm leaning towards now is it was actually my transmission that was causing the issue that I thought was the converter. But like I said, I'll keep you guys posted with any issues. I'm pretty open with telling you my problems that I have. So now that opens the door for this thing to go in the Escalade. So I think what we'll do is I'm gonna put this thing up on the stand, and then we can start working on tearing this thing down and getting it ready to go in the Escalade. I also have to fix a fuel leak on this thing. I don't know if you can see it. It probably all evaporated, but as I was driving, I could smell a little bit of fuel, and I came out, and this injector was a little bit wet when I got back. So before I drive this thing again, I'm gonna make sure that I fix the fuel leak on it. But overall, I'm glad that I took it out. I'm glad that I got to go for some rips, do a couple burnouts with it. I like the turbos on this thing. They spool really quick and they do really well. So sometimes I forget about how fun this truck is. So that was good to go out and drive it. It's frustrating to work on though. Remember I was talking about the Escalade, like trying to build stuff the way that it's easy to work on so you're not pissed off at yourself. This truck was my first LS swap. So it's gone through different variations and a lot of different stuff. But a lot of the stuff that's in there was kind of like I had no idea what the hell I was doing. So added things on top of things and then added other things on top of things. And it's just kind of a big mess and it really sucks to work on it. So that's some project that I have in my head someday, is to actually rip all this stuff out and put it back in there nicely and easier to work on. So I don't know, maybe we'll get there someday. That's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. If you made it this far, you're probably already subscribed and see the videos regularly, but if you're not, do the things.